There is more between heaven and earth than mankind will ever know, and perhaps that is for the best. There is far too much down in the unsavory darkness that is best left alone. That is the nature of our story tonight. It is a tale known as Of the Wild Water. Trent loved the sea. Along with Tallahassee and Deborah, they operated a charter ship. Almost every day they would take handfuls of land dwellers to go fish or see an island. Trent thought it was funny how people would get so excited seeing slightly darker spots in the water and think they had just seen some giant shark or whale. He'd always heard stories of how dangerous the ocean is, but that hardly applies to a fishing boat that barely went a couple miles out into the open water. Right? The day started like any other in the harbors of Churchillo Wood, with boats casting off, cargo being stacked or moved around, tourists and businessmen from Amistad speaking with sailors, until an elderly man, who simply called himself Smith, offered cash to be taken into the open water. He was menacing, with a long, unkempt beard that reached down to his chest. His face was wrinkled, though he kept it mostly hidden with a wide-brimmed hat. He said he wanted to do deep-sea fishing, out there where the water is wild and unpredictable. Deborah and Tallahassee didn't like it. Then again, Smith offered triple the normal fee they would ask for. So, against the better judgment of his friends, they shipped out. Smith was strange. He sat alone, looking out at the water, clinging tightly to his satchel. Deborah asked him what he was expecting to catch, but he only grumbled, "The wild one." After a few hours, they reached an area that Trent thought would be good. But as soon as the boat engines turned off, Smith shuffled to the back of the ship. Everyone assumed he needed to relieve himself. The crew were busy setting up fishing rods and bait, and suddenly the water started to change. It was turning an odd green shade, like algae. Trent didn't like it. It looked wrong. Tallahassee went to get Smith, because it was looking like they wouldn't be able to fish there after all. But when they found Smith, he was carving his palm open, dripping blood into the water, and chanting strange words. Tallahassee shouted for the others. They hurried as best they could with the boat starting to rock. Trent demanded Smith explain himself, and he got an answer, in the form of furious raving. Smith cried, "It's coming! At last the wild one! I spent years looking, and now it's almost here! The devil that took my crew, my ship, my stargazer, Sharugith, is coming." His words were a mix of giggling and crying. The three didn't know what to do, until suddenly the boat jerked again. A large wave had crashed into the side of it and almost took everyone off their feet. Smith laughed and pulled a long knife from his satchel. Smith's screaming could barely be heard over the sound of the wind and the water thrashing. Then, as quickly as all the water had started to turn, it all calmed down again. Trent backed away from Smith, rushing to the front of the ship. The ocean was still green, but for a moment Trent allowed himself to think everything was okay. Then, as if responding to his thoughts, long, thick tentacles lined with suction cups started rising up around the ship. Deborah screamed as long, curved, hook-like claws slid out from the middle of the cups. Trent turned only in time to see her become wrapped by one of these tentacles, with blood spraying out from between the coils of the strange limb. Trent could only hope she didn't have time to feel that. Tallahassee and Smith came running to Trent, and the ship shook again as tentacles slammed down, grabbing hold of it. Tallahassee staggered and fell into the water. They vanished into the thrashing green liquid, but never surfaced again. Smith was busy swinging his knife at the tentacles. Strangely, they recoiled from the weapon. Suddenly, the ship shook again violently. Smith fell to the ground, and a small round pendant fell out of his bag. Smith shouted and reached for it, but Trent snatched it up when he heard a loud snapping sound. He only had time enough to curse once before the ship shattered under his feet, and all of them were plunged into the water. In spite of the green shading, he could see Smith was swimming down towards him, trying to grasp at the pendant in Trent's hand. It was small, with a strange black circular pattern on it. Trent looked back to Smith, and his heart stopped. Looming in the water just behind Smith was the largest shark Trent had ever seen, only it wasn't completely a shark. In place of fins, it had strange membranous wings like a bat. The rest of it looked like a hammerhead shark, only it was massive. Its head was as wide as the boat had been long, and slithering out from its mouth were those dreadful tentacles. Smith turned to face it, but in a sudden snap of its massive jaws, Smith was gone. Trent swam back from it, but it was already closing in. Trent thought how unfair it was. This thing's fight was with Smith, not him. If this thing, this Sharugath, would just give him one pass, he wouldn't bother it again. It turned its head, pointing one of its huge eyes at him, and just as suddenly as all it had begun, for all its fury and savagery, the creature turned and swam away. Trent swam to the surface, grabbing a hold of a piece of wood that used to be his boat. The water was starting to clear, and that was when he realized he was still holding on to the strange pendant Smith had dropped. Trent whimpered a weak thank you, and then passed out. His unconsciousness was plagued with nightmarish sights, an ocean of blackness that swayed and moved as if it was alive, and there was a heavy thumping of drums ever present. He awoke some time later. The Coast Guard had found him. He was safe, he would be returned to shore, and never again would he have to go in the water. But the truth be told, he couldn't. He had gotten lucky, and he knew it. That thing had only spared him by random chance. His life was saved by little more than the flip of a coin or roll of dice. But he would keep his end of the deal. He would never risk crossing that thing's path. He would never again go near the water that was too deep to feel or see the bottom of. He would never dare encroach upon the wild water or the things that dwell there. Donect itorum convenient.